to welcome everybody. Our CPC members and visiting guests. Okay, first thing is chair's announcements. I don't have many announcements. That 4 of our members have been reappointed to the CPC. Carlton Hunt, his term as at large is through 2025, and Martin Manasian, the representative from Open Spaces, through 2026. The only other thing, 2 things. Carlton and I continue to meet with the town manager. It's very fruitful. We learn a lot. Hopefully he learns a lot from us. The other thing is, I don't know how many of you subscribe to the CPA Coalition newsletter. It came out today and there's some great articles on housing. We can forward it out to all of you, but I encourage you to subscribe. And the funding that passed through the legislature is now in a conference committee just working out details for the 2024 state funding. So that should hopefully be coming through soon. And that's it for my comments. Short and sweet. Okay. For public comments, do we have any public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. March 22nd, Josh sent all these out the other day. We have March 22nd, April 26th, and May 24th. We'll start with March 22nd.
You know, I move to approve, but I will also remind people, if you were not at the meeting, you need to abstain from the vote.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Do we have a second for the March 22nd minutes?
I'll second it, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. Josh, roll call, please.
Gina.
Yes.
Carlton.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Stacy.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Bill.
I'm not sure if I was at the meeting. I just joined. Sorry, I got here just a couple minutes ago, or just a couple seconds ago.
Okay. Take a
Do you want to abstain then?
Abstain. I'll abstain.
quick
Yeah.
look.
Okay, thank you.
Nope.
The motion was approved.
Yep. Nope. Okay, good. We were all at that meeting. We had a full meeting. Okay, moving on to the April 26th meeting. The ones that were absent were Bill, Stacy, and Maureen. Everybody else can motion a vote.
Motion to approve,
Is that Harry?
Harry.
Okay, a second?
I will, Carlton.
Okay. Discussion? Okay, hearing none. Josh, roll call?
Gina.
Yes.
Carlton.
Yes.
Harry.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Stacy.
Okay, Stacy was absent, as was Maureen and Bill.
Okay. Maureen.
Abstain.
Bill.
It's on mute.
He's disappeared.
He's on
Okay,
mute.
Bill,
Yes.
you need to abstain, Bill, because you weren't
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry. I'm running in and out here.
Okay.
My computer's not working very well. Abstain. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, good. Thank you. The last minutes to approve are the May 24th. And the only one that wasn't here was Harry.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
The second,
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Josh, roll call.
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Abstain.
Jeff,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Bill.
yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Great, thank you. That was painless. Okay. Moving on the agenda is review of the financial reports. The agenda says, and that's my fault,
Gina.
it said
Gina, it's
May
Pat.
3. It should be May 31st. Oh, hi, Pat.
So can I make a motion to take the Bonfiglioli property out of order? We have town staff on here and I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be on. And that's the thing that we really want to talk about as far as the viability of doing what we want to do with it. Is that something, if I make that motion, could we take that out of order if people are inclined to do so?
You sure can.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll
Second.
second it, Harry.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. Josh, roll call to take the Broad Street properties out of order.
Gina,
Yes.
Yes. Carlton.
Carlton, yes.
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Great. Okay, who wants to start? I agree with that. It's an important thing. We do have a number of.
Well, I think that, Gina, I think that
Sure.
what we asked Michael Dutton for, and maybe, Mr. Antonero and Mr. Tanzi, and I believe there's a representative that's engineering the park is here with us as well. We were asked to vote on a parcel or two parcels of land adjacent to the Stiles and Hart Park, and we didn't have any engineered plans as far as amount of wetlands, setback lines, topography, anything else. We had a like a GIS map with some highlighters on it. So I think what we asked Mr. Dutton for was an opinion from town staff as to the not so much the value of the land, but making sure it could be built upon and making sure we are buying something that has value, because we really don't have much information on it other than, it's 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with some highlighters on it. So I think what we asked was for Mr. Tanzi or Mr. Antonero's department to look at it, give us their opinion on it, and to make sure there was adequate uplands outside of the buffer areas to make sure that we could do what we wanted to do with it. That's all.
Thank you. I agree with what Pat said. Looking at what was sent to us yesterday, and also what we've gotten in the past, we had maybe a few meetings ago, we motioned a request to the town manager, the wetland maps. I think we may have gotten that. I'd have to look back. But
well, all that was provided, Gina, was it looked like there had been some work done on the Stiles and Hart Park, and somebody took an orange highlighter and a yellow highlighter and drew some lines and said these are the approximate locations of the wetlands. So before we vote to pay $350 for something, myself and I think a few other people just want to make sure that land has value, right? Because if it's all wetlands and somebody can't build a building on it, then it may not be worth $350 no matter what the appraisal says. But if Mr. Tanzi and Mr. Antonero, with their vast expertise in wetlands and lots and things like that, can say, hey, there's 3/4 of an acre of upland, there's plenty of area outside the buffer, you can definitely put a building in our parking lot there, then I'm comfortable that we have a professional opinion as to the suitability of the land for that purpose.
And I think too that we had requested that our town engineers look at it and report back. I know they're on here now, but I would still like to see it in writing.
Hi, this is Carl. Let me just interject for a minute. We did submit a letter asking for what we've just talked about. We also asked in that letter that the experts in town that we pay to take a look at the curb cut and the potential use of the what I'm going to call the northern 5-acre parcel for parking, et cetera. We also asked for the information Pat did. And we also asked for the town to look at the suggestion that I had in terms of putting a parking lot just inside the land where the current gate, access gate, is just north of the river. So what I'd like to hear is the answer to those questions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Michael or any of the engineers, would you like to jump on?
Sure. So Gina, let me just sort of frame a little bit of the discussion, and I think those are all great questions, and we've talked about that as sort of the project team internally, and hopefully can give you enough answers to get you to vote one way or the other this evening, which is hopefully our aim. Let me just start, and I'll let Azu take it from there. The project, the two lots that, and I think for those the committee members that don't know, we were approached by a couple of interested citizens about purchasing these two lots. The potential seller had indicated that they would be interested in discounting the price for the benefit of the town. It's a long-time Middleborough family, had done a lot of work in Bridgewater. So they had indicated that they would discount the price. So the actual purchase price would be $300. The appraisal shows I think it was $340. Regardless, we looked at that piece of property once we knew it was available as an alternative potential parking space. It's preferable for a couple of reasons, but for non-engineering reasons, preferable because it's a little bit closer to town. It's better meets our downtown revitalization efforts and goals, and quite frankly, more visible, provide a more visible trailhead, which is important not only for us to draw people to use the park and use it wisely, but also for the police department and having to patrol it, and certainly Parks and Rec for any maintenance and upkeep they have to do. It provided an easier location. So I guess with that short introduction, I just let Azu maybe speak a little bit about the potential use of that location for parking, and Azu and his group maybe about the potential use of versus the 5-acre lot versus the lot down the sewer easement. So Azu, if you want to just touch on those things, that'd be great.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Listening to the conversation that has been going on, I will say that I admire and I truly appreciate the devotions that you bring to bear on the looking out for the interests of the town, and you ought to be applauded for doing what you're doing. And I think the questions that were listening to the questions that have been raised, or the comments, both by Gina, Pat, and Carlton, I think those are real legitimate questions. As you know, I used to be, one of the things that I find that is when you start talking about your experience and you're talking in terms of 30, 40, 50 years, it's pretty scary. You know, it means that I've lived a better part of my life than that I have ahead of me. And I don't like to think about it in those ways, but having served in my capacity for actually 30 years for the town doing wetlands work. And then also about 4 years ago, we had an agent that has since left, my successor, and that would be Steve Sobel. Him and I walked the property. Obviously, there's some survey that needs to be done. But based on my site visit, as well as discussions with our consulting engineer, Mr. Pat Brennan, who I believe is on this meeting, as well as our town engineer, Mr. Greg Tanzi, who succeeded me as a town engineer. I believe the site, obviously, like any other development site, you do need to do some work, but the work that needs to be done, it's not out of the ordinary. And there's an ample lot of upland area that will support parking. We did not do any real detailed analysis as far as building a house or some commercial use, because that is not the purpose or the goal of our site visit or evaluation. We looked at the property from the perspective of making that an integral part of the trail system that is being proposed. And I think that whole trail project is actually a very good, and I'd like to see that come to fruition sooner than later so I can witness it. The parking area and the use of that area for parking will be conducive. We can discuss what types of material that we can use for parking. But to Pat's question or concern, I believe you're not buying or you're not paying for wetlands. You will be able to develop that area for parking. And I think in terms of the other land, the available area for the other land closer to the sewer station is ridiculously far from the road. And I think that one would be a real safety concern in terms of people being there 600-700 feet away from the road and the ability for police to respond to them. So these two, Bonfigli, if I'm saying it correctly, is the optimum location, if you will, for parking as an integral use for the trail system that is being proposed. Obviously, we will need to file an application with the Conservation Commission for review and approval of any activity that is proposed there. Because even though we're not working inside wetlands, you still have to receive the approval because you will be in the buffer zones associated with the wetlands. But yes, I've looked at it both from a wetland standpoint and the interesting thing is I believe you're getting a 3-in-1 value, and from a conservation standpoint, from engineering standpoint, and from surveying standpoint. What we don't do though, the only caveat or disclaimer is we don't do appraisal. That's not our function. So I would hope that I'm not asked, is it what 300,000 or 20? That's outside the realm of what my expertise is.
Okay, thank you, Azu. Any questions for Azu?
This Carlton, Azu, the concept I gave you, sir, was not 700 feet from Broad Street. It could be 100 feet. I had a concept, but we could do two things and address the safety issue you raised by actually installing a parking area just off of that gate right by the river. It gives the advantage of accessibility to the river by people that want to canoe. We could put a canoe launch there. There's lots of positives for a closer parking lot that addresses even better than the downtown revitalization issue, because it's just over the river. It's easily walkable from all of the folks that are going to hopefully be in that area. So I take a little bit of exception to the fact that this thing I suggested may be too far from the road, because I think it's really adaptable to fit it there.
Okay, Carlton, I hear you, and I don't think my comment was to denigrate at all the concept. What I'm suggesting is a lot of that sewer area, I would not want to, in the event of emergency. Remember now, our sewer plant is in an easement, and there's an abutment land that is that is almost isolated, that is not owned as part of the easement. And in terms of wetlands resources, I would note that this property here that we are suggesting, Carlton, it's less intrusive in the riverfront. If you will note, the regulatory criteria for work in our riverfront area, it's a little bit more restrictive, if you will, than it will be in buffer zones associated with simple bordering vegetated wetlands. So that's really those are the two opinion points that I'm using. Not that the concept is not a good concept. I'm just looking at the other issues associated with it in terms of our operation of our sewer pump station, and then impact on the riverfront. There's more impact associated with the riverfront in that area than on the other side. That's all.
So follow-up question, please. Is there a sewage pump in that easement area or not? Is it just a pipeline?
In that easement area, there is a pump a little further down, but there is both a force main and a gravity line. Yes.
So my concept didn't even come close to that easement. It was west of the easement. So I would respectfully ask people to take a look at what we could do there. I have some serious reservations regarding purchasing a piece of property that is going to be incredibly difficult and likely expensive to have accessibility put into it, since there's such a sharp drop off on that proposed property. Have you guys addressed that?
Well, as I stated earlier, we have not done our survey. We haven't done our topographic survey of that. I'm not sure the resources that will be involved to actually do all those detailed studies. If it's one of those things of the kitchen or the chicken or the egg, which one comes first, Carlton? We need to do that detailed kind of work, but I'm not sure if it's a wise, for lack of a better term, expenditure to go through all that and then find out that you're not going to acquire the land. If you're not acquiring the land, then I think that do the responsible thing, do a feasibility study that is not as extensive cost-wise, and then if you're going forward, then you can do more expenditure to that. So I think that's how I looked at it. That when by the time you do all the engineering, the surveying, and the design, the permitting, Even though you're filing with the town, it's a town project, you'll be spending almost $50,000 just to put our engineering plans together. And
So what happens if we acquire the land and the engineering study that somebody pays for comes up, you can't do it? We bought land that we don't need.
No, but that's why I said you do a feasibility at the end of the year, Cotton. That's what that's why people acquire a certain level of expertise. I believe that if I were to ask your opinion, if you would permit me, if I were to ask your opinion about certain wave action on the ocean, and say, well, what are your thoughts on this here? Without really going and doing investigative studies and monitoring our gauges and flood gauges, I believe that with your expertise, you can reasonably say, based on history and based on past wave actions, I would venture to say this is what you should expect, given the history of this area. It's like saying in some areas they're prone to wave actions, in some areas you're not prone to wave actions. That is what you do based on your expertise in oceanography. And I will be inclined to acquiesce to your opinion in that regard, because that is your expertise. So while, yes, your comment or question is well-founded, 100%. But on the other end, I would say that based on at least that our history of known wetlands, the history of our working with the topography, that while there's not a detailed work hasn't been done, it is a safe opinion, and that I can opine on what I believe. I mean, obviously, it's my opinion, and you can always have somebody else that may disagree, but I would hope that over the years, that experience and expertise will have to count for something. Just like I noted a minute ago, Carlton, that there are certain things that even like when we were doing our pond, High Street pond dam removal, a lot of the things that I suggested were based on the conversations that you and I had previously, and that were all incorporated into designing that. So I don't think it'll be foolish for me to be dismissive of your opinions. Of course, I will not do that, because you also have a wealth of experience in doing these things and that I admire. I'm just giving my opinion. That's all. Not.
No, thank you very much. So I think. Go ahead, Gina.
Okay, I was just going to say, Pat Brennan I think he has an answer to your question. If we could just hear him. Pat?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pat Brennan with PGB Engineering. We did look at, and I'm doing the design work for the Stiles and Hart Park improvement. I did look at the possibility of doing the parking adjacent to the river, down closer to the shopping center. The problem is that the town property is fairly narrow coming off the street. And by the time it widens out enough in order to park vehicles, you're between 200 and 350 feet off the road. And at 200 feet, it's still really tight, because if you have a vehicle nosing in and then trying to back out with the slope on the other side, obviously you need a guardrail or something, because the slope just drops right off to the river. When you get out to 300 feet, about 350 feet, it opens up a little bit more. There's more room to park vehicles there and have room to turn around. A little bit beyond that, it's problematic, because there's actually an isolated parcel in the middle of the park there that's privately owned, that the sewer easement and the existing trail passes over. I'm sure if you've been out there, you've seen the no trespassing sign. That's due to that being owned by a private individual. So the parking in that location, in order for it to be safe, just from the vehicle operating standpoint, you'd have to be roughly, I'd say between 200 and 350 feet in. 350 is the optimum location, but that's in there quite a ways. So that's what I looked at, and I know Mr. Dutton had, I believe he discussed that with the police. I'm not positive, but he can obviously answer any further. But I did look at it from an engineering standpoint, and there are problems basically because of how narrow the property is, and then the drop off to the river.
Gina, thank you, sir. I appreciate the input. It's pretty solid information. So what I'm hearing, and I'm not willing to spend money yet, unless we get a feasibility study about how we're going to make that property that we're talking about and make it accessible for micro transportation.
You mean, when you say that, Carl, you mean accessible, handicapped accessibility for?
That's what the main
accessibility of the trail. Yep.
No,
yeah,
it's people that are need crutches or wheels and stuff to get around, and I thought that was part of the whole goal, was to make it accessible.
Yep, that's absolutely correct, and we talked a little bit about that a while ago, and the 5 acre, the 2 acre parcel and the 5 acre parcel, both are going to need significant work. The 5 acre parcel certainly will need very significant work in order to make that properly accessible. We know, just based on Pat Brennan's work thus far, we know that the 2 acre, the 2 lot parcel, while it's perfectly suited for parking, there will be challenges making sure that we can, accomplish what we want to in terms of accessibility. But when you look at the 2 parcel lot and you look at the 5 acre lot, our initial thoughts are that it'll be more cost effective to do accessibility based on the routing from the 2 parcel lot, if that makes sense.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. And I totally respect Azu's comments. I am not a physical oceanographer. I am a chemical oceanographer, a little bit different than waves, but the concept is correct. What happens if we buy the property and it's not feasible to put accessible ramps into that area? What do? We bought land for no reason. So just on a different, shift gears away from the engineering. I don't think you purchased land for no reason. I think you purchased open space that borders existing open space, and I think that open space, especially since it fronts state highway, I think it's really, from my perspective, I think it's important to make sure that remains open space. So I think the last thing we want there is, a small scale, mixed use development, which would be permitted under zoning right now, that sort of backs up to our other beautiful open space property. So I think adding those 2 lots to the overall Styles and Hart, even if nothing ever happened on that property, and that's not going to be the case, but if nothing ever happened in terms of in making overall improvements to the park, having those 2 lots as part of the open space, I think, is important, as Azu pointed out, for conservation purposes anyway. So it's not as if an addition to the park itself is a bad thing. It's a good thing, and I would look, quite honestly, I know it's not going to happen, but the parcels that have structures on them, it's a shame that those are there. If those came on the market, I doubt that we would ever be able to afford them, but I certainly would look at the possibility of securing those parcels and ripping down the structures in order to
add important pieces to the overall styles and Hart Park. But I mean, I think that's just from sort of more, certainly a less an engineering viewpoint and more just aesthetics and open space viewpoint.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to let everybody else chime in. What is the thinking with respect to if we did purchase it, and if you did put a parking lot in there, having some kind of rental facility that would enable people to rent? I was hoping for kayaks close to the river, but that's not going to be real feasible. But also you could do bikes, you could do electrical, whatever. Has there been some thinking about going beyond just an ugly parking lot? And I do appreciate what Zoo said. They have looked at different, and I have suggested using different materials than asphalt, which is critical in my mind. So have we thought about not just a parking lot, but some kind of Parks and Rec activity center?
It hasn't come up at this point. Not that it couldn't come up or shouldn't come up. Certainly, that's an interesting concept. I agree with you. On just sort of, I'll call it an amenity. I'm probably using the wrong word, but having some place where people can really maximize the experience, whether it's kayaking down the river, whether it's fishing in the ponds, whatever the case may be, being able to support that kind of use of that property, I'm all for that. But to answer your question, it hasn't come up at this stage. So I think what we're looking to do is provide parking, not paved parking, except for possibly, and Pat can speak to this, but possibly the spots that have to be handicapped accessible probably need some kind of more hardened pavement, but otherwise we're not looking at a big expand. We're not looking at trying to do a parking lot like the Chinese restaurant that's right next door by any means.
What are we looking at?
I don't know, Pat, do you want to talk to that one?
We were considering like a reclaimed asphalt, which is I've used on a number of open space projects in other towns. It compacts very well. When compacted and you have the right material, it is handicapped accessible. The surface of it is. So it's also a recycled material. So it's in other towns anyway. When I've used it, it's been well received.
How porous is it?
It's not the most porous, but it's not completely run off either. Water will get through it eventually, but it will puddle up for a little while.
So you're aware of those heavy duty gridded pieces that you put gravel or the kind of thing you're talking about in, and that you can put 18-wheelers on. You're aware of that?
Yeah, the GeoGrid. Yeah.
Right.
Or GeoCells, the three-dimensional ones of the GeoCells. I've used those on other projects as well.
Okay.
Hey,
Gina, can I?
Sure. Yep, go ahead, Pat.
So I think that, I'm comfortable with it. I just, I had a hard time voting on something we knew nothing about, right? So we didn't have a plan. We didn't have an opinion from engineering. We had, a very basic, approximate plan. So if it's on the record that engineering has looked at it and feels that it's viable for the intended use, then I'm fine with it. The other thing that I had mentioned was, is if it's coming out of open space, we have another big potential open space expense coming up, and that's the Hanson Farm conservation restriction. So, as long as Michael tells us that this isn't going to impact purchasing that, and it's viable, then I would be in favor of it.
So that I'll address that, Pat. That's a really good point, and I absolutely appreciate wanting to make sure that we can maximize CPA funds to offset whatever the cost is to the Hanson's agricultural restriction. In this particular case, and I think I hadn't really fleshed it out in the application, and I don't know if anybody's read the attachment that I sent around either yesterday or earlier today. I don't remember, but we're looking at a $300,000 purchase of these two lots. I'm assuming, that this committee votes to recommend that, then based on that, I can do the land grant application that is due in a couple of weeks. And that land grant application this year, the reimbursement rate for Bridgewater is 66%. So on a purchase, $300,000 purchase, we could conceivably be getting back $198,000. So the CPC's outlay is minimized fairly significantly. It'd be 100 and change depending on how much closing costs are. I can't fathom that closing costs would be $40,000, but that's what we plugged in there to be on the completely safe side. So we'd plow as much back into CPA as possible, if that makes sense.
Michael, I have a question. Actually, a couple things. The two parcels we're talking about, excuse me, how far is that to a trail? I've walked Stiles and Hart many times, but I've never walked those parcels, and the way it's so overgrown, I'd probably be lost if I stepped 2 feet in. But so that's one question. How far do they need to go? Ideally for distance, I think where the curb cut is would be the best, but as Azu mentioned, and I think you did too, I agree, just for safety for parking. The others they can't be patrol good because unless you shut down a bunch of trees. And Pat Brennan has said what closer to the river parking wouldn't be the best site. So that's one question. How far back? I know I walk at Tidmarsh sometimes in Plymouth, and they have a walkway that takes you to their actual trails. And I measured it one day, and I think it was more than 1/4 mile to it. And that was all just wooden planks. So that would be a huge expense with that. My second question is, do you need to have an updated appraisal for the land grant? Because, okay, my further question for that, the appraisal all the way through, or quite a few spaces, it mentions that the billboard adds to the value. The billboard is gone. I don't know who took it down, but it's gone. I think you did it.
I don't like billboards, but I don't like vandalism either.
That wasn't you up on the ladder.
No.
But just kidding. But I'd be curious how much, like what would be the appraisal without the billboard? Because throughout the appraisal, it notes that the billboard adds value to that land. So I guess there's two questions.
And that was an extensive analysis and valuation of the income from the billboard. I was really taken aback by that.
Me
because
too, Bill.
I thought that from our last discussion, we all agreed that we did not want the billboard under any circumstances. And can we be assured that the billboard will not miraculously appear?
Oh no. To clarify. So the appraisal is done best on the highest, based on the highest and best use, and the reference that the appraiser made to the numbers regarding the billboard was to essentially identify and document the appraisal based on the income. So that the billboard revenue contributes to the income potential of that property. So under no circumstances would the billboard remain or go back up if the town purchased that property. Quite the opposite. It goes away. You know, certainly the state's not going to fund a purchase or offset or reimburse based on or reimburse for a piece of property that still has a billboard or, you know, continues to have a billboard. They wouldn't pay for that, and nor would we allow that. So no, I want to make sure that's clear. So the analysis of the billboard was really only to document the potential value of that land as part of that appraisal. You know?
It was presented as a selling point.
Exactly. Well, it is, and it is, but not to us. Not to us. It's a selling point to somebody else, but not to us.
Right, but it's gone now, so that's a moot point.
Yeah. And I think, Gina, your other question was access. So I think, you know, based on the committee's action tonight, if positive, what we'd ask Pat to do is find, from an engineering perspective, the most effective way to connect that piece of property with the trail system. And that really will boil down to an engineering decision. And I think there are probably a number of different options on the table there, but that really would be an engineering task.
Okay, my last question is, there's no curb cut there. And according to the appraisal, because it's a state highway, you need to have the state's approval to make a curb cut, and it could be costly. Would that be something the town would pick up, or you'd be coming back to CPC for that? Do you or any of the engineers on here have any idea what a curb cut would cost?
I guess I'd defer to Azul on that one, who's done many curb cuts.
Well, actually, Gina, the state does not charge for curb cuts. They have to review the application to make sure that you meet access requirements, radius requirements, but they don't charge you to, and especially being a municipal project. And whereas Bridgewater is a political subdivision of the Commonwealth, they will not assess any fee to the town of Bridgewater.
Okay.
But who actually pays for the curb cut?
For the actual, that will be part of the physical work that the town will do as part of that parking lot construction.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I was going by in the appraisal. It said that when it mentioned the curb cut, it said it was a very costly project.
I think that probably references what it would cost a private entity to develop that curb cut, because you would have engineering costs involved. But as the zoo pointed out, you know, for the town, there's no cost, there's no application cost, there's none of that. And as part of the total project, that curb cut would be considered part of the total project and incorporated into the greater project.
So it's just time and materials for the curb cut to the town.
Yes, sir.
Great.
So what, Gina, go ahead. But I have one more thing has to do with.
Go ahead, because and I'm going to ask the rest of the CPC for their thoughts.
So I did a bit of a forecast because I'm quite concerned about the topic that was raised by Pat in terms of if we and the Hansons go ahead and acquire the conservation restriction for their land, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. You have to start to look at how much money does the CPC have in our coffers in order to cover that cost or some of that cost. And so I did an analysis and I looked at the FY23 open space reserve. It's about 24,000. There's a budgeted reserve that's about 26,000. The 24 open space reserve budget would be about 100. And then the FY24 budgeted reserve would be about 264,000. And then we have wonderfully, which we didn't get to because we deferred this, we have an excess income that will go into the undesignated reserve at the close of this fiscal year of about $260,000. Then we have undesignated fund balances of about $1.2 million. When you add all those numbers up, and if it was the only thing we were doing was open space, and the Hanson project, we would have about $1.9 million I'm forecasting in FY24 to go towards an open space purchase or conservation purchase. However, we have a project that discounts that down a little bit because we have heard that we may be asked to put in more recreation in terms of pickleball courts. That drops that number down. And if we buy this particular 2-parcel lot, we would have available about $1.6 million in cash to hopefully avoid having to bond at $2 million at an, I think, very high bonding rate now. My simple, stupid math says that if you bond a project, you're going to pay somewhere between 50 and 100% more than the actual cost of the project. Depends on the rates, and they're not good right now. So I think the committee needs to seriously examine and think about what we may want to do in the future, what we should do here, and look at the budget side of it. So basically, if we did buy this, we'd only have, it'd be less than $1.5 million probably to pay.
Michael,
and that cuts everything else. We couldn't do anything else really.
okay, two things here. I hate to say, I want to get the opinions of the rest of the CPC members, but my thought is, and I've said it before, I'd hate to not recommend a project that I think is good or valuable to the town to save money for another project. I'm not crazy about bonding, basically because of the high rate, but if we have to bond some of it, we have to bond. Looking at your figures, Carlton, it looks like just about every penny we have would go to the Hanson Farm purchase restriction.
You could always refinance the bond, Gina, and you know what I mean. And Carlton, I know the cost of borrowing is expensive now, but that's hopefully temporary, and we could always refinance. So it may not be as high when we go a year from now, or whatever it is to bond it. You know.
Well, that's great. Given that statement, I'm going to request off, not on topic here. We pay a lot of money for the Academy building bonding that goes out to 2046. We ought to be looking at rebonding.
Well, yeah. you've got a very good interest rate. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but we bonded that, I know, at an optimum time. So your interest rate there, you won't beat the interest rate on that bond right now.
Good to hear.
But I will say, Pat's absolutely right. I mean, you've got a good chunk of cash. Bonding a project doesn't mean that you have to bond the entire project. If you have 80% of it you can fund, and I'm just picking numbers out of the air. You can always bond the 20%, which is a lot less, and then you can retire that bond early if you so choose, or in municipal world it's called refunding, but it's really refinancing. But you can do that as well at a lower interest rate. So Pat's right.
Okay, Michael, one last question. When are we looking at, I know the timeline has changed for Hanson's. What are we looking at? Are we looking at next fiscal year or the following fiscal year?
So that's a great question. I'm looking at next fiscal year, assuming that all the cards line up. We have the same land grant opportunity that we'd be looking at for the 2-lot purchase. Is the same grant program that we'd be looking at to offset the cost of the Hanson's purchase, so the agricultural restriction purchase.
Okay.
So a year from now, we would be looking at doing the little less than a year from now. Probably we'd be looking at doing the CPC funding, and then we'd be looking to finalize the grant application for land grant funds.
Okay, good. Thank you. Going to ask CPC members what they think. Bill?
Yes, I have a pedestrian question in light of what Carlton has just presented in his sobering analysis of our funding for the next year or so. My question is, I noticed that the tax evaluation for the two lots is fairly low. It's $115,900 in 2021, but the purchase price is $300,000. That's quite a discrepancy between the tax evaluation of the lots and the selling price. That's not true in the tax evaluation of my house, for example. I think the tax evaluation on my house is probably greater than the value, than the actual selling price.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Bill, is that one lot or two lots?
Two lots.
It's two parcels. So each lot's 115 or both lots are 115?
Both lots combined 115,900. And according to the memo, that is, I assume that's right. And so is that kind of discrepancy typical because it's land, or am I just, or
that's certainly not a pedestrian question. That's actually a very good question. So there are a few things that play into the valuations. We revalue every year. So we do a big revaluation every 3 years, but every year we're making adjustments based upon what the market says. But the first thing to know is that all the valuations townwide are a year behind. So just in the perfect world, when the assessor says, okay, your house is worth $100,000, well, that's what it was worth last year. It may be worth less this year. It may be worth more this year, but it's always a year behind, essentially. So that's number one. Number two is that land valuations generally lag way behind, just in terms of how the assessors the assessors process, and they're generally much lower than the appraised value. So that's. Those two factors play into that quite a bit. We have to go by the appraised value, and that's what the land grant program looks at. The assessed value really is not relevant to any of the purchase or the reimbursement or any of that. So it goes by the appraised value.
Okay, I thought that was probably the case. Thank you.
But if you want us to increase the value of your house, we'd be happy to do that.
It's overvalued as it is.
So I did. I mean, it's a complete aside, but when we were really dealing with the owner of the mobile station early on, and asking if they would be willing to just sell it, which would make it very easy, they said, sure, we'll sell it for $1.5 million. And we said, well, it's not worth $1.5 million. It's worth whatever it was, $499 or $450 or whatever it was. And they said, nope, it's worth $1.5 million. And they made the big show putting it on the market for $1.5 million. And that nobody's biting. But Jason said, well, I'm going to go back to him and say, if you think it's $1.5 million, I'm going to forward that to the assessor's office and they can adjust the valuation. We didn't hear from them again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bill, what are your thoughts on these two parcels?
I'm rather torn. I mean, I like the idea of buying open space, and according to Mr. Dutton, we probably will get a reimbursement from the state. That, did he say 66% of that value? I think. So our outlay will not be 300,000, but will be much, or 340. It will be much less than that. So that's encouraging. Is the grant application? I know it's not a done deal, but do we have a good chance of getting approval for that?
That's a good question. So the same program funded, I don't remember what the percentage was. It was lower than 66 at that particular year for the 5-acre parcel. So they are, generally when the state is in, they're in, and they've done site visits to this location. They're very excited about this particular location because it's one of the few substantial acreages that essentially is an in-town park. So they are pretty excited about that piece. So I think all those things sort of factor into a lot of positive momentum for us.
Yeah.
Michael, are you saying that the state has actually looked at those 2 parcels and have enthusiasm? That's never
absolutely.
been in any writing.
Yep,
that's not been in any writing to us.
No, and the state's very careful. The people that come down to do site visits, you get into conversations with them, and you have a lot of conversations about things that they don't necessarily want committed to writing for a variety of reasons. But they have walked that property. They've walked the entire Stiles and Hart property, and been quite excited about it. So
you're reading their body language, so to speak, that they are enthusiastic about this opportunity.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, good. How about, let's see, Jeff, thoughts?
Oh, well, I think this has been a great discussion. I'm not aware of any historical significance to the sites that I could ask about. I think I'm ready to move on to the next step whenever you are.
Okay, good. Thank you. Harry?
I think I'm going to abstain because I'm the park steward and I might be a little.
Okay, can we have your thoughts on it though? Are you abstaining from giving your thoughts to? No, we've lost Harry. Pat?
Harry's muted.
Yeah, Harry
He's
and
probably
Pat,
with-
you're both muted.
He's probably feeding his kids.
No, putting them to bed. Okay, let's see. Who
No,
else do we?
feeding myself.
Okay, who else do we have?
Maureen.
Stacy? Do we still have Stacy? I think we lost Stacy. How about Maureen?
Hi, as I stated before, as part of the Open Space Committee, we're all for purchasing these lots if we can. I do understand what Carlton has been saying about the money issue, but if we're going to get a lot of reimbursement for the state, hoping it won't be such a big deal. But I do think Hanson Farm is extremely, extremely important to get that taken care of at the top of the list. But I'm all for keep going with this, see what we can do.
Okay, good, thank you. And it looks like we lost Stacy. I think I've hit all CPC folks, except myself. I think, as I said, looking at parking and the safety of the other parking, I just like to see parking out in the open. Easier for the police to patrol. The people would feel safer. I think it's a good chance to get the property, and with the land grant, if it looks that positive for us. So that's my thought. How about, we have a few engineers that are on here we haven't heard from. Let's see, we have Greg. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I echo what Azu Itanero and what Pat Brennan had to say. It has, it's a parcel of land that's got accessibility, visibility. You know, yeah, there will have to be some engineering done. But all in all, it's an opportunity that's in the hands of this board.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I just want to go back to a question that Carlton had about the parking lot material, that the proposed material is rather semi-porous and that it will create runoff in a conservation area. I don't know if we have any real say-so in that matter. We probably don't, because I just want to go on the record to say that we should avoid any kind of runoff from a parking lot in a conservation area, if at all possible. And Carlton brought up that point, and that was really an excellent one, I think, because we are intruding in habitats here of all kinds of natural creatures and these habitats are going to be disturbed, and we should try to avoid any kind of flooding that would be created by runoff from a parking lot.
Good. Carlton?
Just wait, if anybody else first, because I have a question to the town manager. If the committee would move to recommend the town council to appropriate the $340,000 for the purchase of this property, I would like to see, and I don't know if this affects the potential grant that you're looking at, but if we would say it's contingent upon completing a feasibility study with respect to access and a plan for the parking, that would be the money would be contingent on completing that feasibility and parking lot. Does that affect your ability to apply for a grant?
I don't think so. I don't think that would affect, and the zoo or Pat or
well, Carlton, how long? I mean, so you don't want us to buy it until that's done?
What I'm saying is that we have to go through the town council first, and we can put contingencies on our purchases. And if in fact we found, going to the zoo's comments, if we did the feasibility study and we found that there was no way, or it was so bloody expensive we shouldn't do that, then we don't buy the property.
I don't think I'm just sort of off the top of my head. I don't think that would necessarily affect the grant application.
And Michael, what is the deadline for the application? Do we need to vote tonight, or do we have time?
No, the deadline for the application, I believe, is the 14th. Let me see, I had it open here.
Okay, so we'd have to vote tonight, so we wouldn't be meeting again before the 14th.
Is our vote sufficient to apply for the grant, or does the town council have to do it?
No, that's a good question. Your vote is sufficient to at least apply for the grant. Absolutely. Because and I'll tell you why, because a lot of these grants in certain towns have to go through town meeting. And so the Board of Selectmen will say, or the Community Preservation will say, we recommend funding. And the grant folks in Boston know that it's going to be a period of time before town meeting gets to actually vote that money. So in our case, it's a little different, but they know that once the Community Preservation Committee makes a recommendation, then they can take in the application, the grant application, and begin to analyze it. So, and then they'll wait for the town meeting vote. In our case, they'll wait for the town council vote.
Okay, thank you. Jonas, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just here for background music, I guess.
And to see all our lovely faces, right?
Oh, it's picture perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
Oh, I just wanted to say, is Bill the same Bill, the professor at Bridgewater State?
Yeah, retired.
Oh, you retired?
Yes, yes.
Wow, you look the same as the time that I met you at your house. Remember when I came to the West? You must have good genes.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well,
moving on.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Zoo.
It's
been a while.
We got Bill from working there. Right.
Right.
Like a zoo says, it's good to be seen and not viewed.
Yep.
Gina, Pat's asking a question.
Okay, Pat, go right ahead. I thought you were mute. Your hand disappeared. You got the floor.
No, so Carlton, so explain. Can you guys hear me or no?
It's breaking
up.
Hold on. Can you hear me now or no?
Yep, now we can.
No?
Yes.
We can hear you, Pat.
So how does this, I guess I don't understand. I guess I don't understand Carlton's condition. I mean, so isn't there an ongoing feasibility study of the trails and parking and all that stuff?
Not this specific one that I've heard.
Well, I think, but based on this committee's vote, I think it'll allow Azu and Pat, to plow ahead with really looking into this particular site. So I'm not too worried about that restriction, if that's the restriction you want to tie to the vote.
Well, if we can have a person agreement, I don't know what the word is, gentleman agreement, female agreement, I don't know, but a person agreement. Basically that if this committee votes to recommend that we would at least see some kind of report on the feasibility. Can I ask that be a promise?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd rather do it that way, I'm fine with that as well.
That avoids having
But Carlton, isn't that what we've been asking for? I mean, didn't we ask? I mean, not to just keep. I mean, I wish we got information sooner, but isn't that what we asked for initially? Was for the town engineers to look at it in terms of feasibility to do what we want to do there?
Well,
and isn't that why they reported today?
We thought we were, but I haven't heard anything concrete that actually gets into topography, as the town Azu mentioned. He made an analogy that I'm hanging my hat on, and would I move forward if I knew wave action would erode a beach that took houses down? Well, I wouldn't know.
I guess initially when this came before us, right, we were asked to approve 2 lots adjacent to the Stiles and Hart Park. We had no engineered plan. We had no plot plan of the site. We had no wetland analysis or delineation. So we asked for a report. The day before one of our meetings, we got an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with an approximate line with highlighters on it. To me, that wasn't sufficient to make a $350,000 purchase. So we asked the town manager to ask the engineering department to determine the feasibility and the viability of trying to do what we were trying to do, and to confirm that there were adequate uplands to make the lot valuable. Because why buy a piece of land if it's unbuildable or you can't do anything with it? It'll stay open space in perpetuity anyway if it's all wet, right? So my whole thing was I wanted to make sure that the land had value to us or to somebody else, and that it wasn't, a junk piece of land that we're paying $350 for and would look foolish later. If it's on the record that the town staff has looked at it and has done an analysis of it and an evaluation, they're telling us it's viable, it's buildable, and there's adequate uplands, then isn't that what we were looking for?
80%, yeah. But we are also looking at a parking lot, and conversations were held around how do you make it accessible to all ilks? And I've heard it likely is, I've heard we could do this. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take engineering. That's all. That's my point.
So how maybe this would sort of satisfy everybody. So there's a small ad hoc committee for Stiles and Hart. If the committee is going to vote favorably to recommend, we will make sure that somebody from the CPC is incorporated into the ad hoc committee, as well as we'll probably do ad hoc committee for Stiles and Hart in conjunction with Open Space Committee, just to initially review the plans, and then prior to sending the plans to Parks and Rec for their approval. So if we incorporate somebody from CPC in those meetings, would that be of help?
Well, Michael, didn't we talk about I guess what I was always looking for was we were told that there was a delineated plan of this parcel, and that's really what I was looking for all along. Is to have somebody take a look at the wetland line, determine that it's good lands, that we can put a parking lot or somebody can put a building, because the property has value and we can't make it work, and someday the town wants to sell it and we don't want it as open space. I mean, I think we would keep it as open space. I just want to make sure it still has value, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to buy a house lot, before you buy the house lot, you typically hire an engineer to look at the lands, to see if there's any wetlands on the site, and to give you an opinion as to whether or not you can build a house on it or not, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's all we're looking for here, is that, but it seems like we have an opinion. It seems like we have an opinion from Azu and from Greg Tanzi that there's adequate uplands. There could be a mixed use building on it, as you said. Is that all true?
Yeah, but I think Pat, what Carlton's looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting, is Carlton wants to make sure that the access from the parking lot to the trail system is going to comply with ADA or accessibility that we've committed to as part of this project. I think that's the piece Carlton's looking at, and I don't disagree. And so if you want some assurance that that we're going to be planning this this such that it's going to assure we're going to be everybody's going to be assured that there is that accessibility. I have no problem having a representative from CPC join us at the ad hoc committee level and just review the plans so that everybody's aware. I mean, anybody can come to a meeting, but I would make sure that we invite somebody from CPC to just sort of look at that component, or look at the whole thing, but you're interested, I think, Carlton, is that particular component. Am I correct?
I'm not going to disagree because I agree.
Oh, you sound like me.
No, well, sidebar. I once was in a meeting and somebody said, whatever you did, the words you just used. And basically they came, and I think I was it. And they came back and said, so you agree? So I think I'm fine as long as the minutes inculcate that statement that you just made, that the ACPC member, and I would say beyond Haley, I'm looking at Harry, who is on our committee, who's on Concom, is somebody in addition to Harry. That would be my only, otherwise I think it's fine as long as the minutes recognize it.
Mm-hmm. I would also include a Parks and Rec person.
So Parks and Rec, the whole committee, we're going to bring the plans to the whole Parks and Rec committee. I mean, it's a park, so.
Right.
Yeah, so that's no problem.
Okay, with more funding for Parks and Rec, right? I have to throw that in. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, hearing, do we have a motion? No
I'll
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve based on the recommendation from our town staff and engineering department.
Great. Oh, sorry.
Shouldn't that motion be a little more specific?
Yes, I was just going to say that. Can you add into it, Pat, the account? We have just 23,227 in open space, so it'd have to come from undesignated. And if you say undesignated for FY23, just to add those two pieces of info to your motion.
Sure, and just to modify that motion to take it out of undesignated.
Yeah, it's 35,900.
And out of fiscal year 20.
Okay, great.
It's 35,900 undesignated fund balance.
Right, got it. Josh, do you have the actual motion down?
I'm just editing it right now.
Okay.
There is no second. And if you don't have a second, it dies.
Okay, no, we're just making sure we have the motion down right. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Josh, roll call.
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Abstain.
Harry. Harry,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Patrick,
Pat, you're muted. Okay, he might have stepped away first. Oh.
No problem. Yes. But yes.
thank you. Maureen,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, good. Thank you, CPC members and guests for a great discussion.
Thank you also.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good
Gina,
night.
Gina, could I ask you a quick question? I have a conflict that I have to leave. Do you guys still have quorum if I leave?
I think we do. We have one. Hold on. 1, 2. Yep, we do.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night, all. Thank you very much for your work. You
Okay, thank you.
You are real good stewards. I appreciate your work. Thank you.
We appreciate you too, Sue.
And Carlton, thanks for keeping me on my toes. It's good. There's a passage in scripture that says irons sharpeneth iron, and you're a good iron.
Thank you.
Carlton keeps all of us on it, especially me on my
Moving on. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yep.
folks.
Okay, Michael, don't run away.
Oh.
We might need you for more.
Oh, I can't run away. Okay.
You can't run away. Okay,
No
going
problem.
back to where we were for the financial reports before we took this out of order. You can see Carlton talked briefly about the finances. I don't need to go over all that. We do have some projects we can close out, and unused funds will go back to our bucket that they came from. The other thing for financials is the end of year process. We've never actually been instructed by the finance department on how to close out the year, which is the reason why things we voted from the previous fiscal year were paid out of this year. There is a process. Project accounts to automatically carry over. We don't need to do anything. Anything from the administrative account has been voted from FY23 funds. We just have to let finance know that we want to encumber those, carry them over into the next year.
Right.
the two things we have to identify are the Hanson Farm appraisal and the Congregational Church deed restriction. Michael, do you have a vendor yet for or a contract for the appraisal?
I haven't. I forwarded to Lori. I reached out to the appraiser. Boy, whose name just escapes me. He's the same one that did the Murray Needs. But I reached out to him, and he wrote back an email. I told him what we needed from him. He wrote back an email, and I think touched base with Lori yesterday, and she indicated that was enough to encumber and move the funds. So she's got what she needs. So I don't believe you need to do anything as a committee at this point.
Okay, could I ask that you send us a name? We have this form that Laurie has asked us to fill out.
Okay,
let me sure to cover it.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because
yeah, just to add while you're looking, the form simply is fill out the account number, fill out what's the amount of money you want to carry over, etc.
Right, and the vendor. That's right.
And that way we won't get caught by what we did last year, where we had voted something, it hadn't been encumbered, but it had been voted. So the finance department, which is not the policy anymore, had actually issued money for some things that we took it out of our current admin fund.
Right.
So we're trying to avoid that going forward.
No, and I believe me, I appreciate that. So as Don would say, don't listen to Michael sometimes, because we need to follow a process, and sometimes Michael doesn't always follow the process. So Bill LaChance, William LaChance is the appraiser. So it's William LaChance.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll just add that on to our list. Okay, great. Thank you.
The last thing I will simply say that we're in really good shape with income. The finance report indicates that we are, like I said earlier, 258,000 and change to the positive in terms of funds coming in this year.
Good. Yep, we have close to, well, just over $250,000 extra than what was accounted for, what was estimated. So that's good. Okay. Central Square Congregational Church phases 2 and 3. We're just on hold for that. We just keep it noted as it's an application we received. Funded projects update. Active project, Central Square Congregational Church. I've reached out to the woman from the company that was doing the deed restriction and has asked her for a meeting date in person, and I'm going to forward her everything we had sent her before to make sure we have everything.
Gina, I see Barbara Morey's on here with the church. I don't know if she she wasn't on when we had citizens' comments.
Oh, she is.
Okay. Wanted to say anything.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had just looked and she wasn't here. I'm glad you could get on, Barbara.
Thank you, Gina, for sending me that link.
Okay. Do you have anything to yeah, did you catch just my update?
I just wait on you for a meeting date. And
yep.
So I'm not doing anything. Just waiting.
Yep. And as soon as I hear back from Ginny Adams, I will let you know. I've requested any Wednesday or Thursday. And I'm also going to forward her the document we had put together, commenting and answering questions she had asked before, just to make sure that she has the most up-to-date information that we had sent. And as soon as I hear back, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Stiles and Hart Parkland improvements, Michael?
So as you just saw, oh my God.
So let me ask, where are you in terms of getting a final draft plan that you can circulate?
Basically, the final draft is almost done. It was pending your recommendation this evening. So Pat Brennan will go back and incorporate and do exactly what we talked about just now. And then it's his I don't know what his timeline is, but I would imagine within the next week I'll be able to circulate what we see as the final draft that will get circulated amongst the ad hoc, the open space committee, and then ultimately Parks and Rec.
Great, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so the engineers are looking at the property, correct, to come up with a plan.
Right. The plan, as I mentioned, the plan is essentially done. I've seen most of it, via meetings with Pat, but I don't have a paper copy per se, or actually an electronic copy yet either. So he's done the bulk of the work now. He just needs to do the remainder.
Which is the remainder is? Which
is exactly what you just voted. So
basically they're going to
parking lot and accessible trail.
So they're going to do the research and study to actually add that to the plot.
Right.
Thank you.
Because I was talking about what we had voted before, not voted tonight.
Right, but what you voted, so Stiles and Hart, this is now part of, even though it's a separate project, quote unquote, it's a purchase of a piece of property. It's incorporated into the larger Stiles and Hart property. So
okay.
Another quick clarification. I think in one communication or conversation, CPC can't get reimbursed until the RFP's out and there's a contract in place. Is that correct?
This won't. So the transaction can't close. So the transaction itself can't take place until the state gives the award, and then I sign the standard contract, the grant award contract.
This is the
at that
grant.
Point, right? At that point, the transaction can take place.
Okay, so we're still a little bit away from that.
At best, I would say at best the end of September.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. Question, backing up to what we just voted on, not to change the vote, just a question. Who's going to hold the restriction for that?
The same entity that owns
the rest of it.
The restriction for Stiles and Hart, yeah.
Okay.
And I honestly can't remember if that's Conservation Commission or if it's Wildlands Trust. But
in one place you said the state restriction.
Well, it is a state restriction. So the state requires you to sign sign off on the restriction. Who actually holds that conservation restriction? I just can't remember. So similar to the 5 acres, they required us to sign a conservation restriction on that gets recorded. So if there's on record, we've committed, and to that property is now part of Chapter 97 or 97 land, but but who actually holds that restriction? I just don't remember if it's the Conservation Commission or Wildlands, but I could probably find out pretty quick.
What's important is you have a plan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Michael always has a plan.
Well, I don't know about that. But they do. The state would not grant the money without the restriction. We don't get the money. We don't get the reimbursement until they see the restriction.
Excellent.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next, the Summer Street mobile station property. Where is that at the moment?
We are in process of surveying the Flora Little Park at the request of the landscape architect so that she can incorporate the mobile station property into the park itself. And so we should be done with that. We should be done with that survey this week. So the sort of coordinating committee will meet on site once we have that and just go over some very 30,000 foot ideas. And then once we have that, then she'll begin her public process. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing, we've also commissioned a structural engineer just to see if and how that building, if that building is savable, basically, if it's structurally sound, so that we will know that as well, which we need to know.
Okay, question on the surveying to, I guess, merge it with the Flora Little Park. Is the Bridgewater Improvement Association okay with actually merging them?
I can speak to that because I'm a BIA member. We're not merging the two properties.
Okay. Right.
The town owns one, BIA owns one.
Okay.
But the plan for using will be looked at by both entities. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, merging was my word. I don't think.
I'm going to state so Michael knows the BIA is right now looking at meeting at the park to go over some of these things in July. So if we can get the survey done, the sooner the better.
Good.
Colin, could the BIA also invite somebody from Parks and Rec to that?
It's up to BIA and the town manager, not me, but I can mention it.
Okay.
I will mention it.
So Gina, to answer your question on the, from my perspective, absolutely. When BIA is essentially a private entity, so we don't want to infringe on their discussions. But once we get, the working group back together, then absolutely. If you or somebody else from Parks and Rec wants to join that, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. And how is the deed for that? Is that all set? Or
that is yes, that's all set. So we own that property. Interesting, well, it's a convoluted story, but interestingly, there's some evidence of shenanigans going on. Not with us, and has nothing to do with us, has no impact on us, but it's unclear who the trustees actually are of the trust that owned that property. So we have not paid out anything, and we will not pay out any money until essentially the creditors who have a security interest in that property can establish exactly who they are. So that's where we are now. It has nothing to do with no adverse impact to the town or CPC or anything. It's just it's curious,
Interesting.
Yeah. You mean there could be liens on the property and things like that?
Oh, there were liens. That property was leveraged almost to 100%. So when that happens, when you do it eminent domain taking, and the property is leveraged to that extent, you obviously all those loans are recorded. In this case, I shouldn't have said the trust that owns property. It's the trust that lent the money. Can't tell us right now who the trustees actually are. So we're holding the money. That's great. I guess we'll make some interest on it, but yeah, until they can tell us who actually is who the trustees are and how we should be paying out the money to the real people that are the trustees, we're just going to hold the money and see what happens. So
great.
Good. Okay. Anything else from anybody on the mobile station? Okay. Next is the Hemlock Drive windows and door replacements. We just need the grand agreement signed. Michael has added a few things this week. just thoughts which should be included in the grant agreement in Carlton. I'm just updating that, and I'll send it off to Michael to be signed and for the Housing Authority to be signed. Old State Farm Trails, has the surveying been done, Michael?
It has, and actually I had a meeting yesterday on this, and as you know, I'm not as immersed in this particular project as I am in others, but we did have a meeting yesterday. The surveying has been done. There are essentially two things that need to be resolved. One is one piece of the trail, the trail layout, I should say, that fronts the 40B project there, Curve Street 40B project. The trail has to be slightly adjusted so that the trail layout is completely within the DOC property, the way that it had been flagged. The actual 50-foot or 100-foot corridor sort of encroaches on the 40B property. So that's easy. That's an easy fix, I think. And then the consultants are going to come and meet with us on site just to make sure, or meet with Conservation Commission members just to make sure that their proposal for the trail system and what they propose to do for the wetland crossings that they want to make are okay with the Conservation Commission. So really only those two things. They did secure additional grant funding to do I guess initial trail engineering or complete trail engineering and complete parking lot engineering. So they did secure that grant that they were looking for, which is good news.
Okay.
Who's they? Who's they?
Well, technically we, the town.
But the state's running the program.
The state has granted the funding and the state is doing the surveying, correct? So the state will record the survey and record the easement once that's all done. One of the things that I thought was going to be cause a significant time delay is that the state does not have property descriptions for its own property. So go figure. That which is I now know is not uncommon for state properties, but they have a workaround, and there was I guess a very productive conversation with DCAM, who's the state's sort of property owner, and they are ready to plow ahead, review the actual survey work once that's completed, and then issue the easement and record the easement. So it's that seems to be making really good progress.
For planning purposes, do you expect that the CPC will be asked for more money?
Honestly, my hope is no, because I think there is enough. The state has now done, I believe, granted two different grants to this project, and it's the same principle. Once the state's in, in for whatever that expression is, in for a pound, in for an ounce, in for a dollar, in for whatever it is. So they are they're invested in this project, and so that's a good sign. And I'm hopeful. There's plenty of trails money out there, so my hope is that we don't come back to the community preservation for additional funding.
Yeah, I just want to conserve as much money as we can for the big project.
Yeah. Alan, to answer your question, when Kitty Doherty and I can't think of the acronym for her group, when she had come before us, I think it was in January, this was just phase 2 of the project. And I had specifically asked if they'd be coming before CPC for any of the other phases, and she said yes.
I think it's up to the town, not.
Yeah, I don't.
That was her thought.
Yeah, I based on what the money that I see out there, unless there's some kind of required match that I'm not aware of, then I don't anticipate coming back. But I certainly can't say that definitively.
Time will tell.
Yep. Okay, good. And there's, in that account, there's $4,400 that hasn't been paid out yet. Will that be paid out? Do you know?
$4,400 in the trails.
Yes.
Right.
I imagine it will be paid out because the you know, as you know, what we had to pay for the survey that the state commissioned. And I know that survey is not complete yet because they still have to make the adjustments. So my assumption is that there's still money to be paid out there.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next, the Parthenon freeze. It's been sent out to.
They're in they are in restoration now. I don't believe there's a to return date, and the town clerk who's is working to get the building cleaned out has circulated a and discussed with all town departments that are required to keep files, and have gone to them and found out what they need to have, should have, where do they want to do with it, et cetera. So she's completed a survey for the townhouse, and I'm just updating you on that because the townhouse project is done, right, Michael?
It appears to be complete. I know that I saw Patrick, the architect, had a punch list. So I'm assuming it was pretty easy punch list. So I don't know that, I don't know.
All the scaffolding's down.
All the scaffolding's down. He had some minor issues, you know, painting. There was some bleed through of stain or something or other, but the scaffolding's down. I think based on what Dawn told me today, she had talked to him. I think he's either coming back Friday to sign off or tomorrow. I can't quite remember, but that was where that stood. But yeah, it's basically done, effectively done.
Okay, good, thank you. And that's good because I left the townhouse off of my list for updates. So I'm glad you guys mentioned that. Okay, next, McElwain School.
They still haven't taken, they have not accessed the
35,000.
No, it's
135.
Yeah, they have not accessed that yet. The last I talked to them is they're working on some things. And they're aware that they need to send it. I think town managers ask that they give us a short, not a detail, but a short response that talks about how our money was used towards this incredibly recognized by the state as one of the best affordable housing projects ever, I think.
Yep, good. And it's made a couple of publications too, I believe. Yes. Good. Okay, projects to be closed. We have 4 that are complete, 3 are pending the final reports. Pickleball courts, memorial building, the original project, not the added on that we voted last month, and Summer Street property. We're just waiting for final reports. We can't close them out per our policies until we get a final report. And the final report signifies that the project is done and it's finalized. The one that we do have a final report on is the library archival and digitization project. And that has, $992.96 left. We just need to vote to finalize that. And we'll notify the finance department to close out that project and return the funds to, I believe it came from historic. Okay, somebody was just saying something, but they got cut out.
So basically, we do have a final report from the library
Right.
director. I don't know if we've distributed it, but basically we've developed this requirement that if we don't have a report, we can't close it. Once we get the report, we have to take a vote. That's a policy that the CPC has to take a vote to take any underruns and return it to the account from which it was taken.
Right. So the only one of those projects that are completed that we have the final report is the library. So we need to have a vote to return.
So I move to close the library project. I'm going to get to, why can't I find it?
Account.
Okay, account 585000. That to close that account.
Yeah.
58,500. And to return $992.96 to the account from which it was taken.
I second that.
Okay. Discussion. Okay. Hearing none, roll call, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I said the next three pickleball courts, memorial building, original grant, and the Summer Street properties just need the final report. And Michael, 2 of those fall on you for the final reports.
Yep, I've got final reports to give you.
Okay, good. Eligibility forms approved, waiting for applications. Hanson's Farm. Michael, or Carlton, can you just give us an update on that?
Josh, can you put up the map that was so kindly scanned? I had received what I'm going to say, probably the final document that identifies the property they want to include in the conservation restriction. And that is the property, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, that is the property lines that the appraisal will consider. So they've indicated what areas, parcels, whatever you want to call it, that will not be included. And I just wanted to show you that as a preliminary thing to show what we're looking at.
You have it, Josh?
Yeah, I'm just getting it up right now.
It's big. It probably takes a while.
Yeah,
so,
it took a second to load.
So when it comes up, I think it's on the order of, there's two parcels. If you can look, parcel 8 is the little triangle plot, that's included. And then you see Pleasant Street, and any of those lines along Pleasant Street that are black, those are excluded properties. So the included properties is this middle part called Lot A, but to the lower left corner, there are 2 parcels that one is 14 acres and another one's a small one. Those are included. So I believe the total acreage in that larger area is about 70 acres and the other one is about 2. So what we're looking at is about 71 acres, give or take, that will be considered for conservation restriction. And that's what, Michael, that's the, right now, that's the diagram that the lines that will be assessed by the appraiser, correct?
Correct. Yep, correct.
And so that's basically where we are with that one, as far as I know. I don't know if you've considered it. Thank you, Josh. Anybody have questions on that? Is there, has there been any work going towards who will be the deed conservation restriction holder? You think it's going to be Concom?
If it's, yeah, I mean, not it'll either be Concom or it'll be, quite frankly, be the, oh God.
Not Wildlands Trust.
Potentially Wildlands Trust. Scott, we talked to Scott a while back, and he indicated, at first he indicated he didn't think Wildlands Trust would be interested. Last time we had a discussion with him, he said that there may be interest in holding the conservation restriction. So we'll see. But we've got a fair amount of time to have that discussion. We have the template for the restriction all in place. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But
and so when they're ready, the town will apply, send in the application next year, FY year.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Any thoughts about how
we'll
soon
send it in. So I, as Mr. LaChance, who's going to do the appraisal, will guide us so that he does these for all of the land grant, preservation, larger pieces of property for preservation. So he's all over the state, but I'll take my cue from him about, how timely the appraisal needs to be in order to qualify for this particular grant bucket. So yes, but I suspect we'll be in front of you with an application much earlier, a year from now than like today.
So sometime after the first of the 24 the year.
Exactly. So probably February, March, probably.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Michael, what is the proper term for the restriction? Is it a conservation and agricultural?
It's in this case, it would be an agricultural restriction.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, concerns on Hanson's Farm? Okay, Janet, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. David's working and Bob's laid up. He was in an accident, so he's been hopefully coming home Friday, but so there's nothing that I'm privy to. But
okay, good. And please give Bob our best too.
Thank you.
For a speedy recovery, and David too for doing double duty.
Yeah, he's pretty he's always busy this time of year, but it is double duty.
Right. Okay, give them both our best.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the Methodist Church, I haven't heard anything from them. Last I knew they were trying to put together quotes, but it sounds like the whole committee fell apart except for one person. So I will follow up on that to see if they're still going to go through with their application. Administrative account updates. We already talked about the Hanson Farm appraisal. Recognition plaques and signage for CPA funded projects. We talked about that briefly, I think at the last meeting, the May meeting. Carlton, I think you wanted to talk about that tonight.
Yeah, what I'd like to do if the committee votes for this is that I'd like to set aside FY23 administrative money to in fact enable us to purchase a number of plaques. And I got a preliminary estimate. We talked with the finance department, Lori Durini, and she said she can't encumber any money without some kind of paperwork about the amount of money, et cetera. So I haven't sent this to you, Michael, yet, but I did get a from Bridgewater Trophy. And basically, I suggested there might be 4 12 by 12 cast aluminum plaques. They priced that 14 6 by 12 cast aluminum CPA plaques, 14 of those, 3 plastic CPA plaques. Those are basically to go with the display cases at the library, indicating CPA money paid for those. And then that total amount came to be, that budgeting estimate came to $6,224. And again, I have a list of, I don't know what that number comes to. It's 24 potential items. And so what I would like to do is to encumber that money based on this, what I just told you. I'm sorry I didn't get it to you all to look at. But that's the process that we discussed last week, and we started to draft the policy around that. And that if we encumber the money, then that money is held basically for expenses during the next year. So go ahead.
I just have one question. Thank you for looking into this. Much appreciated. We've always said we haven't enforced, but we've always said it's up to the grantees to put up a sign or some type of recognition. We would obviously, if we vote to fund signs for past projects, some type of signage or plaque. In the future, are you proposing that it wouldn't be part of this vote, but just your thought, would that be for all upcoming projects?
I think it's unfair to somebody that asks for, $300,000 and we say yes, and then at the end of the day we say, oh, by the way, you have to pay for a plaque, or you should. Yeah. I don't think that's the right way to do business. So one of two things. Going forward, we change the application and we put a line in there that says recognition plaque cost, and we add the money ourselves into that. That's one option. Going backwards in time, I think this is the only way we can do the leave behinds that I think, and I have talked with many people, including most of this committee one-on-one, and everybody's pretty much been in favor of doing this.
In our last meeting, we talked about consulting with other towns that have CPC committees to find out what the best practice is for these plaques. Of course, any plaque that would be installed on a building in the historic district would have to have our approval. We would probably create a policy for a kind of approval of a generic sign, so that every time you wouldn't have to come back to the HDC. You mentioned something about plastic signs.
These are going to go in the library in the cases that we paid for.
Oh,
the display cases. Okay. I hear you loud and clear on that. I did do a search of the coalition website, and this is not an uncommon thing to have a recognition plaque.
I think it's important. Yeah.
Okay, paid, Carlton, you said it's not an uncommon. Is that for the CPC itself to pay for it?
I didn't look at that. Basically, if you look at the website and put in plaques or recognition, you'll come up with a whole list of projects that include that. And a lot of applications do include the requirement for a signage of this type. That's as best I can.
In other towns, you're saying?
In other towns, yeah.
Right. By saying, and I had meant to look at some of those applications, and I didn't. I kind of forgot about it. But you said it's in the application to have some sort of signage. Does it specify who pays for it?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
But I'm trying to say today in Bridgewater, I think we've not done as good a job as we could to get our work in the town council's appropriation in the historic preservation, the open space, that kind of thing. We've not done a good job of making sure people knew how their money was being used.
I agree. And that's what I was saying. We always say they need to put up signage, but shame on us, we don't follow up with it.
There is a requirement. There is a requirement during a construction project that we have a CPA sign up.
Right.
That's the requirement. But there's nothing in the application that what I call a leave behind sign.
Right. But we usually say it as part of the award letter too, is that when the project is complete, they have to put up some type of a sign or a plaque for us, but we can change that. That's not a big.
Well, we're going to need to adjust and have a conversation next fiscal year about how we want to proceed with this. I'm just trying to take care of what I think is a shortcoming in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. I was just trying to, if somebody comes forward with a project and we say you have to pay for a sign, and they say,
I didn't budget for it.
yep, and the town paid for all these other projects. That's just me being the devil's advocate here. But I know what you're saying, to do a catch up on them. So I think they do need recognition. As I've said before, I hike a lot of trails that were funded, at least in part, by community preservation, and they're all noted that on the trailhead. Most of them. So I think it's important that the CPC be recognized.
So it's up to the committee to move this forward.
Okay. Any other discussion?
We don't have a motion.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we fund the put an item in that the people getting the grant fund their plaque.
Okay, so you're saying, Harry, that we shouldn't fund the projects that are already done? You're saying for future projects?
For future projects, yes.
Okay, that's. I think we can take, personally, I think we can take care of that next year. Right now, I'm asking to set aside $6,500 from the administrative account to fund recognition plaques, etc., for previous projects.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, can you?
I'll second it.
Okay, Harry, for your motion, can you add in from administrative account 530000 administrative expenses FY23, just so we can encumber it?
So moved.
Okay, and Maureen, that was a second?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion?
Would that be FY23 or FY24? Or aren't we in the FY24 budget now?
Well, if we specify FY23, will we have a written quote from a company?
I see.
Marking here, we can include it on our encumbrances. So in the main, it will be paid out of the FY23 budget.
Okay,
and
good.
Lori told us, my wife's driving back from Springfield, so I'll call her in a minute. I forgot my train of thought.
You're saying
Lori.
I'm sorry?
You're saying when Lori.
Oh, when we talked to Lori, she said we needed to have a piece of paper that actually showed it, and we need a vote from the CPC. Therefore, the audit trail is closed and clean, so the auditors would say it's okay. So that's why we're asking for this now.
Right. What was the actual amount, Carlton? I know you sent it to me, but I don't have it.
I rounded it up to $6,500, and I think that's what Harry agreed with.
Yep.
Motion.
Okay.
And if we don't spend it, it comes back to us, or we can close the account and it gets back.
Yeah. And it will, after the end of it would go into undesignated if we don't spend it, spend the whole thing. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, Josh, roll call.
Tina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you. We'll get
Thanks,
that.
Carlton, for that. Good work.
Yep, thank you. We're almost done, I promise. Not like the last few meetings that are an hour.
You know what, Gina? I'm going to suggest, we were going to go over the policies and procedures document tonight, but I'm going to suggest we push it off until next meeting.
Yep.
Okay. That way we can get this new policy that we just talked about in terms of non-municipal projects and how there was a question, how do they get paid? What's the process? So we've drafted a policy. Town manager hasn't seen that drafted policy. He made some great suggestions, and I'm trying to draft it into a policy statement and a procedure statement for the policies and procedure document. So I'm going to suggest we postpone review of that until next meeting.
Okay, good. Okay, you jumped over a couple things, but we'll jump back to those.
I'm sorry, not mine.
No, that's okay. I know we had said last month we'd send you out an updated, but just in the last 2 weeks, I think we've updated the update numerous times. As Carlton said, it was something came today as policy for non-municipal projects about paying for the project. All that needs to be, we'd like to have, doesn't need to be, we'd like to have it put into the policies. So we'll get that to you as soon as we can. Okay, back up to anticipated projects, restoration of the fire department, antique pump wagon. I haven't heard anything from the fire chief, but I will reach out to him to see where that stands. Michael, have you heard anything on that from Chief McDermott?
Nothing new. Nope, Gina, nothing new on that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Additional pickleball courts. I know there's lots of talk out there. Parks and Rec meets in 2 weeks. I don't know what. As far as I know,
there's no action
come to us requesting more, but there is a lot of scuttlebutt out there that there's a need for 2 more courts. So we'll see what happens with that. We talked about policies and procedures. Next is the annual public hearing that we're held to have once a year. We had one last fall, so we can hold off till next fall for that, this coming fall. The next thing.
Gina, quick question to Michael. Sorry, we're keeping you busy tonight. I know the law says we're supposed to hold an annual hearing. We're also coming up on the need to start in FY24 to do our 5-year plan update. Is it problematic if we don't hold a hearing until late, not necessarily this in 23, but in 24, early in the spring? Is that legitimate?
I think that's fine. I don't think there's any stipulation that the committee holds its annual hearing any particular time. So I think the committee gets to decide that. In fact, if you end up incorporating that hearing into a hearing on your 5-year plan, I think that's fine too. But I think that's up to the committee.
Okay, good. Thank you. Speaking of the 5-year plan, we've reached out, actually we double reached out because Carlton reached out and I did as well to Jennifer Golson, who, for those of you that don't know, she from JM Golson, she's a consultant and she was our CPC consultant for years and years, but she dropped all that to concentrate on housing, which is really her expertise. We both reached out to her to see if she'd be willing to do the 5-year CPC plan. The one we have was last done in, I think it was April of 2020. We approved it. So it's coming up and it does involve public hearings and to get input from folks and surveys. And Jennifer has said she's still doing that. So that's good. She has the expertise. Say her company did our last one. Michael, my question on that is, we don't have a quote from her yet on what her cost would be. Last time, 5 years ago, we didn't bid it, as far as I know, because she was contracted to be our consultant anyways. Depending on her price, would we need to competitively bid that? Or if it's under X number of dollars, we wouldn't.
If it's yeah, I think that it's fair to say she would fall under $50,000.
I would say.
So
is that the new limit now? Wow.
That is the new limit, yeah.
It would have made my life easier at work.
Yeah. Well, of course, everything has doubled in price anyway. So,
right.
But no, that is a new limit, and so if it's under that, then you would have to solicit 3 written quotes. But knowing that that market right now, you'd be lucky to get 1 response, but you have to solicit 3, but get lucky to get 1. But we can handle that when the time comes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I will just say she forget
She's
it.
Wonderful.
It's been a long meeting and my brain's slowly atrophying.
Okay, but she is wonderful. I think she's, not that I know a lot of CPC consultants, but
I think it's, I remember, I think it's important, and Michael, you could concur or not concur, but because we're doing so much work on the MBTA zoning, I think it's really important for the CPA to have some processes around that, and the way to do that through this 5-year plan. That's where I'm thinking right now.
That's a good point, and I think somebody like Jennifer, gets that. She's doing a bunch of projects around MBTA zoning, which is great because she brings that experience to bear, from the CPC side too. So,
okay,
good, thank you. Any other old business? Okay, new business. We didn't have any new business except for other new business. Kind of goes along with the public hearing and the planning. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, that according to the CPA part of the Mass General Law, that your community preservation committees need to report to the governing board of the town, city or town, which would be our town council, once a year. Is that correct?
That is, I'm not sure by state legislation, but certainly by
town
admin code. Yeah. So whenever this summer would be great if you wanted to come to the town council and just sort of give them an update on CPC activity, that would be great.
Okay, good.
I am going to try. One of the things we started doing, and then we're somewhat interrupted by COVID. We were trying to get committee chairs in. I think Carlton has been in a couple times on energy, but the pandemic came and that kind of threw everything for a loop. But I do want to get back to that in every meeting. Try to get every meeting have a different committee come to the council or committee chair, what have you. So, good. But yeah, if you have a preference, the August meeting, whatever works. I do think it would be useful for the council to hear, what your focus is. It's obvious, I think what the CPC's focus is for the coming year. And I think it will be useful to sort of brief the council on that too.
Okay, good. Well, we'll work out a date for that. Thank you. Committee liaison reports, saying as we've already been here for 2.5 hours, I would suggest that unless somebody has something really important to add from their committee, I'd suggest that we hold off on that. Anybody have anything overwhelmingly important? I know what your committees do are all important, but okay, we'll skip that. We have upcoming events, public comment. Okay, hearing none. The next meeting date is July 26th at 6:30. And I believe, unless we hear different, it will still be Zoom, via Zoom. Okay.
I will not be able to make that meeting. I'm sorry. I will be on vacation. So I'll give you a heads up.
Okay.
I hope that doesn't affect the quorum.
No, well, we'll do where it is a high vacation time. We'll just send something out ahead of time. Josh, maybe you could do that.
I may not be there either.
Okay. Josh, can you just send something out maybe next week and just ask if people plan to be around for the 26th?
Yep, I'll set a reminder.
Okay, great. Okay, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Hearing none. Josh, roll call.
Dina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes, and thank you, Michael.
Harry,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes, and good night,
Maureen?
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. Means you adjourned.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 8:52. Thank you,
right.
everybody. Thank you, Michael, for
Oh, thank you.
input.
Nope, thank you very much.